Paul actually changes his mind from the most protective state to the most accountable state, right? So I think
so his own legal escape miracles and his own choice of the fire.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. As opposed to saying,
all right, so
go ahead.
That proves that he really, really committed.
True.
But what did he bring for us to believe him?
Well, he brought witness testimony from the eyewitness testimony from those who were at the scene.
Gotcha.
So that would be the core hard what's that word I'm looking for non-hard evidence? What's that word called? When a case is won on, oh my goodness.
So he's gathering witness reports, and those may have meant more back then because they were so much more part of it.
Well, and this is a critical distinction. Think about in all these other books we read, witness and testimony is such a specific distinction, and that's how we cite all of this throughout what we're talking about with Paul and with James and with all the main Peter. We're talking about witness reports. They call it that specifically. Why is that, right? To a certain extent, it's because they were collected as witness reports.
It's because a report is just like with a firework. If it goes bang, it's a report. If you hear back from it, right? Yep. Whether the report is worthwhile, that's up to the DA to go out and get some decent feedback. But witness reports, that's, this is, the question is, how reliable is Paul? And presumably, if he's, trying to act in good faith, and the evidence is that he did act in good faith, he says he didn't break the law, and being truthful, not having false witness is a big part of it. So he says he witnessed these guys who said that they witnessed.
Yeah, so he goes, meets and takes witness testimony from the main players. All of Peter, John, you're talking James, you're talking his brother, you're talking his family. I would argue that Paul likely, as he cites many times, talking with many people that he doesn't name, I would argue Paul talks with Romans. I would argue Paul talks with all sides because Paul's going there as a Pharisee who has been executing Christians based on legal authority. So that's what he's going there as. So he's talking to all of these people, and within 2 years of that going on, remember, there wasn't even a report initiated on the Russian collusion component until 2.5 years after the alleged first hack.
So are you saying that maybe people are lying to him?
What's that?
Are you saying these people are maybe relying to him?
The witnesses? Well, no. So what I'm saying is that for whatever reason, there is a second review, a legal second review taking place on was this person potentially the Messiah or not? And the reason that would take place, which is a review, right, is because you would have some kind of what's the word when you when a person an appeal? You have an appeal, so you have the appeal take place, and then you have a secondary review, and that's Paul at this point. And whether that's a conscientious appeal that he had for himself or something bigger than that, I don't know. But the reality is, he's wondering if he is being lied to by those Pharisees while he's killing people.
Okay. Fair enough. So there's a real question of reliability. But what are some of the things that these witness reports talked about? What did Paul bring to other people to say, well, what about this? Yeah, but what about this?
Well, the biggest one is many reported seeing a risen Christ. Now that's including Paul. So that's going to be a large one for...
Wait. How did Paul see the resurrection?
No, he saw the risen Christ. He didn't see he didn't see the resurrection take place. But for 40 days after, there were reports allegedly. Again, we're going to speak, of a risen Christ seeing revealing himself to different people, disciples. It was over 300 people actually that allegedly saw him. And Paul being one of them. However, we won't even take that perspective here because for me, I'm going to take.
Oh, you said for 40 years?
For 40 days.
Oh, for 40 days. I was going to say, Elvis died in like 1977 or something.
Yeah. I mean, we have Tupac sightings.
Elvis, that seems like a stretch.
No, we have 40 days where he walks. There's a very apt scripture about after him dying, them all being locked in the cabin, Christ coming through the locked door. They actually speak as the locked door very specifically and revealing himself and actually dining and eating fish and bread in the house and then leaving through the locked door without opening it. So these revealings are one thing that he's going to cite, but I'm not going to cite them here. But I'm going to cite.
But what are the things that Paul bring around? Like, what about this? What about this? And by the way, we're like 8 minutes long, so we should try and.
Oh shoot! Yeah. So we'll actually end on the cliffhanger and then continue this one then. So basically, we'll leave on this one. The other piece of evidence was the time leading up to the crucifixion. He's going to take the witness testimony, and what we have effectively is Paul's interpretation of those events from witness testimony. This is what we have. Right. And the witness testimony from the witnesses he interviewed. So that would be Peter, that would be James, that would be, so these are the people that he interviews. And then we have his interpretation of how to perceive them. And then we have their actual testimonies. So these are effectively the other throughout. Now,
he went and investigated the Gospels.
Yeah. Now, and so here, well, what we know as the Gospels, this is a critical distinction because we know them as the Gospels. We know them as the Bible. At the time, the organization of these things hadn't all been, completed. Paul is collecting information that we will one day know to be the Gospel. But at the time that Paul's citing it's just witness reports.
Let's wrap up this piece of it for now with this. If Paul was Mueller combined with like Columbo, and
good analogy.
Who were these guys hanging around this homeless guy? Who were these guys?
Well, it's either going to be. I'll tell you. I can give you. So
the DA was sniffing around for like a long time about this story. Who are they from his point of view?
You're talking about the guy. So like the disciples.
Yeah.
From what perspective? From the investigation. So from Paul's point of view, when he's going,
these guys are who?
When he's going to interview them, these guys are potentially the Russian trolls.
All right, so basically the usual suspects.
Yeah, perfect. So these guys, yes, precisely. So these guys are effectively the usual suspects. These guys are the scapegoats. These guys are the Russian trolls that he's going to interview.
These are the assholes that the Hebrews have been trying to deal with for a while.
And basically, Paul really. One thing that's really understated about Paul is he could have, not only could he have not, he ends up building the church, basically. He could have not just not done that. He could have actually killed Christianity before it started. He was doing it to begin with. But when he goes to do this investigation, if he finds differently, Christianity is going to die right there. Because these are the usual suspects. These are the people who walked, and Paul is executing, and he's going to find out, and he's going to offer a ruling one way or the other.
All right, so every once in a while, someone will say, well, don't forget, Christ was an immigrant. He was an anchor baby. No, he fucking wasn't. They were going on a census. Yeah. They were going across town to get counted or pay taxes. But this is a little bit different. He's not an immigrant. What is he exactly? He wasn't a drug dealer, right? He wasn't a farmer. He was a carpenter. He was building, wooden things. But from Paul's point of view, before he converted, who was Christ in his point of view?
The enemy.
It's like Vera or.
He is certainly the enemy, because if you are not the Messiah in those times and you're claiming to be the Messiah, you are in blasphemy. And even if everything in your life you've done could be perceived as good, if you've done that, you are the enemy. So he is the enemy to Paul before conversion.
Is seditious appropriate?
I'd love to tell you if it is or not. Can you tell me what it means?
Seditious means you're looking to undermine the government.
I thought you said, it's seditious. I thought I said, sorry, I had that wrong. So seditious. Yes. So absolutely. So here is what Christ is. And this is the most understated part about Christ. Christ is a playbook, a game genie of sorts to social revolution. And he is absolutely seditious. He is a unique kind of seditious in those times. He is seditious to both the Roman rule and the Hebrew law. Now that's a very, very unique position back then.
So seditious, I mean, how many people did he kill?
Well, no, he killed none.
Okay, so how many wars did he start?
None. Well, yeah.
Well, okay, now wait a second. What did he do?
He rebuked.
What do you mean he rebuked?
What I mean by rebuke is...
Did he get someone pregnant and ditch her?
No, he Gandhi'd. He Gandhi'd. There's such unique seditious ways in time and history, and he did a Gandhi sedition. He rebuked structures to their face in a way, in a manner, from a position, and did not give in to certain temptations of power that come when you're able to do that. Because the first thing that comes when you rebuke the structures and the power, and they've realized that you can do it, is they try to bring you in, right? But what he does is say, fuck that. I'm not coming in there. These are my people. And that was the most threatening thing to a power paradigm similar to the one we have in America today of rulership and church, Hebrew and Roman.
So you said he was, he did Gandhi style, and you said he did a blueprint for social revolution.
Correct.
In other words, he was offering information.
Yes, that's exactly right. He was he was offering, I would call it truth. Others may disagree. He was offering an enlightenment truth of how to be in a relationship and interaction with one another as people. And the reason that that's an issue, if you want to know, look at how much political discussion occurs on a day-to-day basis about racial or gender or any kind of divisive tension. With this, he who is without sin cast the first stone was the biggest slap in the face of Hebrew Pharisee to date at any point in time, because not only could they not kill him, he wasn't calling himself the Messiah. Not only was he not changing the law, he was applying the law as written and calling each person who claimed to be a Pharisee to face. Are you a sinner?
Right. So, in other words, Christ's problem is that he fucked up the mind guards.
Yeah, exactly.
So let that be a warning to you. That's what you're playing with.
Yeah.
That's why it's fucking important. And he's not anywhere near the first example. Some people say Malcolm X got killed because he discovered that, the skin color really isn't the issue. It really isn't.
Yeah. No, I'm a big Malcolm X fan. I'm actually a huge Malcolm X fan, and the timing of his death, what you just described, is ideal. He was about to become. This is why Paul was so dangerous. Paul and Malcolm X are very similar.
How's that?
Had Malcolm X lived, he would have been converted pacifist, in my opinion. Now, he still had certain social views I wouldn't have agreed with, but Malcolm X was starting to go towards passive and recognition that racial, war wasn't going to win anything. He was going to passivity, right? So Paul is effectively living out what Malcolm X likely would have had he lived, which is a conversion from a very, very kind of a violent, extremist from the Hebrew Pharisee culture to a pacifist of the Christian culture. And that's exactly what Malcolm X is doing at the time of his execution. He is becoming pacifist, he's becoming very unified, and then he's dead.
Malcolm and Paul, one of their big similarities is that thing that nobody ever wants to do, that public admission.
Yes, that's a public admission of error is one of the most powerful revocations you can provide if you're on a level of social status, especially one that carries extremism of belief, ideology, or law, or in Paul's case, both.
When you say it does,
what's that? Sure. I said it's. I would say public admission of error is maybe the most powerful force that someone of a high social status from an extreme theological or legal perspective has. So, like when you come out and admit error, there's actually a study on this after Bill Clinton had cheated or had done the Monica Lewinsky thing. There's a poll done, and Americans were significantly more willing to forgive his error than his infidelity, than they were him lying about it, right? And so effectively, an admission of error would have maybe even gotten him a boost in favorability. So in other words, the humility, the humbleness to admit a theological and ideological error that was rooted in you, and then show that conversion of a sense is super powerful to structures that exist that don't want those things happening.
And it's one of those things that actually brings social capital in lots of ways. Yeah. As long as you don't get killed for it.
yeah, exactly. And Malcolm X, as much as I love Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., as much as I love JFK, and I love them both. I mean that. I've read and I enjoy them both. Malcolm X was the greatest loss of that time period for true change, and the reason is both JFK and Martin Luther King, they were both already on the level. They didn't change. Malcolm experienced a change that people would witness themselves and was about to speak to that. So because he went through it, it gave like a playbook that others were going to be able to see and go through it with him as well. And so the loss of Malcolm X was probably, in my opinion, the greatest loss of that time period, because his on-stage conversion was more critical than an on-stage just, solid social concept to begin with. A conversion is always more powerful than a consistent, solid ground.
That's interesting. And it's appropriate for Christ because we always talk about the Redeemer, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And he's the one that'll take you in if you fucked up and don't know where else to go.
Yeah.
All right, so let's call it good. Public admissions of error actually increase social capital. That's a weird paradox that a lot of people have a really hard time with. That's why I tell people that the first honest concession is always the hardest. Once you get over it,
if everyone just goes to their 5-year-old brain in those moments of public concessions, they'll remember that they got less punished for the most part when they went and said, "I'm so sorry" first, and they got maybe a day grounding instead of a week.
So we're basically done talking about mind guards. We may pick up again on a particular mind guard, and I'm just going to mention to close out. You ever heard of Ron Clark?
Well, that name sounds too familiar to say no. So, but to be fair, my mother's maiden name was Clark.
These are really common names. Ron Clark is got like Teacher of the Year, I don't know, 8 years ago or something like that. And he wrote a book about 55 rules. And I'm not going to tell you all 55 rules. That's ridiculous. But I will tell you the one that you mentioned, which is that if you are honest, it reduces the punishment by 90%.
Yeah.
If you come clean, okay, yeah. Now we know you're aware you're fuck up, and we know you want to do better. You're just a kid. Or you're
That's
just
it.
a mess, so yeah, you're honest about it, and we can fix it. And that's the other thing. A lot of times the issue is not who caused the problem. The issue is the problem, and we just want to fix it.
That was what you just said, and I think that's an important thing to underscore before signing off. You're exactly right. Unless it's an authoritative parental structure, most parental households want the problem fixed, and the problem isn't the thing that happened. The problem is the mindset that led to it. So when you're able to go and admit that you erred, the parent's going to take less of a hit on you because they don't want to punish the good thought. Because if you go and admit error, and that is what they want you to know, and then they still punish you, then you just won't admit error ever again. And so
that's right.
And so that's the key there.
There's a popular idea I learned from another movie: fix the problem, not the blame.
Well, yeah, exactly. Fix the problem, not the blame. Hate the sin, not the sinner. Right? I mean, I think that throughout time we find, forget the religious component, there's true wisdom in those kind of concepts, no matter where you pull them from.
All right, so that's so we got to finish up here, man.
Sorry,
I was going to say something else in response to that, but I'm going to drop it.
Okay.
We got lots we may want to talk about next time. I'm going to put some in the comments and answer suggestions and criticism and follow-on thoughts and everything else.
All right, and are you good if can I give you a shout then about midnight, because I'm awake, man, and I'm good to go, and I would love to talk about the other stuff we've been talking about.
Yeah, we can keep texting all that too. All right, so I really enjoyed it.
Same here.
We found things I did not expect to find. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, a lot of fun. So we'll keep doing that. We'll pick it up right here next week. Thanks for checking it out, and appreciate it.
Yep, it was a lot of fun.
Yep.
And I'll go check comments and see.
Spence, how's it going, man? Is that a spider shirt or Spider-Man? Just different spiders.
Lots of spiders.
That's awesome. I'm typically afraid of spiders, but I know you're cool, so I like that shirt. So, all right, I'll see you.